Health Organization urged all sides involved in the Syrian conflict for ensuring a safe access to healthcare in the country. Haiti's National Human Rights Network denounced the execution of more than 110 elderly people. And in Venezuela, the Ayacucho 1824-2024 International Colloquium concluded, recalling the relevance of the battle as a political symbol, the validity of the call for unity among the peoples of the Americas. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The World Health Organization urged all sides involved in the Syrian conflict for ensuring a safe access to healthcare in the country. W.H.O requested to guarantee the safeguard of health personnel, health centers, and the continuity of medical services. On November 27th, terrorist groups launched a large-scale overnight offensive against the National Armed Forces, taking over several cities and proclaiming a coup to the Bashar al-Assad's government. The office of Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed on Monday that he personally authorized political asylum for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his family. Likewise, the head of the office, Dmitry Peskov, reaffirmed that Moscow remains committed to dialogue among all regional countries regarding Syria. In addition, the diplomat warned that a very complex time is approaching associated with instability in the Arab nation. Nonetheless, the Kremlin spokesperson did not provide any details on the whereabouts of President al-Assad, noting that no meeting between the Russian head of state and his new guest has been scheduled yet. The president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, called on all Middle Eastern countries to prevent further Israeli expansion in the region, strongly condemning the incursion of the terrorist regime into Syrian territory and drawing attention to the incursion of the Israeli army into the so-called buffer zone. President Pezeshkian urged all internal political forces in Syria and the states of the region to remain vigilant against the attempts of the Zionist regime to promote its expansionist interests and committing illegal acts against the population of the countries of the region. It is important to recall that the Israeli regime continues to attack the countries of the Middle East and innocent civilian population of that region, committing crimes against humanity. And the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said there is great regional concern over the collapse of Syria following the overthrow of government by terrorist cells backed by the U.S. and Israel. During an interview on Sunday in the national media, the head of the Persian diplomacy affirmed that they are closely following the events in Syria. He stressed that he has had meetings with 8 countries in the region and all have expressed concern that the country does not move towards disintegration or become a territory for terrorists to destabilize the region and for Daesh to seize power that years of President Bashar al-Assad's anti-terrorist struggle prevented them from controlling.
Everyone was concerned about the events in Syria, and there was a concern about the serious consequences that the disintegration of Syria would have for the region. The concern being that Syria could descend into a civil war and move towards a failed state and internal fragmentation.
The Iranian foreign minister also referred to future relations with Syria.
We are closely following the events in Syria, and our interaction with them will depend on their behavior and on what policy they will adopt towards the Islamic Republic of Iran. Our criteria for the political process is the Resolution 2254, which will lead to an inclusive government in Syria where all the different parties have their role.
The General Secretariat of the Arab League affirmed that Syria is currently experiencing one of the most important and dangerous moments in its modern history. Through a statement on the social media, the Arab League stated that it is following with great attention the rapid development of events in Syria, assuring that this Arab country is going through one of the most important and dangerous moments in history. They specified that preserving the territorial integrity of the country, respecting its sovereignty, and rejecting foreign interference in Syrian internal affairs should now be the main components in developing an Arab position on the current situation. Finally, they expressed that the current situation calls for all Syrians to be ready to dialogue and to put the interests of the state first. In Lebanon, at least 2 people were killed following shelling by the Israeli occupation army in the south of the nation in a new violation of the ceasefire agreement. The Ministry of Health confirmed the death of the people during an airstrike perpetrated by the Zionist army against the locality of Deben. The Israeli troops continued their aggressions against the Lebanese people under the excuse of attacking positions of the Lebanese resistance movement, Hezbollah. According to official figures, more than 3,000 Lebanese have been killed and more than 14,000 have been wounded since the beginning of the most recent escalation of the Zionist offensive against Lebanon. Let's now take our first short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In South Korea, the Justice Ministry has imposed a ban on President Yoon Suk-yeol from leaving the country while he is investigated on treason and other charges after decreeing martial law last week. The Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials requested the measure through the Ministry of Justice. The agency has also asked police and prosecutors to transfer the case to it. South Korean police and prosecutors are investigating Yoon on suspicion of treason, mutiny, and abuse of power, charges that also hang over several senior government and military officials involved in the controversial move. Although President Yoon is clinging to power, events have taken their toll on him, and according to the South Korean pollster Real Meter, the president's approval rating has plummeted to 17.3%. In Beijing, Chinese Premier Li Qiang warned that deglobalization is exacerbating strains on the global economy. During a summit attended by leaders of major multilateral financial institutions, including the IMF and the World Bank, the Premier highlighted the increasing uncertainty in the world economy and noted a rise in discriminatory trade measures since 2020, stating that the trend of deglobalization is worsening. Qiang's remarks reflect growing concerns among global leaders regarding the potential for escalating protectionism to disrupt international trade and economic cooperation, which are vital for recovery from recent economic downturns. Qiang also pointed out that the number of trade barriers has been increasing annually, complicating efforts to stabilize economic growth.
In the context of weak world economic growth currently, uncertainty caused by this issue has further increased, causing major interference to the operation of the world economy. Some countries are now imposing high tariffs at every turn, setting up protective barriers with more and more restrictions on trade. Since 2020, the number of new discriminatory trade and investment measures in the world has increased by more than 5,600 per year, far exceeding the pre-pandemic average of 3,000 per year. This increase is indeed too large. It can be said that the trend of deglobalization is getting worse and worse.
In Georgia, anti-government protests held in the capital Tbilisi since the end of November have left more than 400 people arrested. Deputy Interior Minister Alexander Daravitlis informed at a press conference that during the protests held since November 28th, more than 30 persons have been identified and criminally prosecuted. He also detailed that 372 people have been arrested and proceedings have been initiated against them, of which 62 have been subjected to administrative detention and more than 100 have been fined. In this sense, the official also pointed out that 150 police officers were injured in the demonstrations. He added that during the rallies, several cities' infrastructures were destroyed, as well as cars and material goods belonging to citizens. And at least 28 people were killed and 37 injured in an airstrike by the Sudanese army on Sudan on Sunday. The new attack comes amidst clashes with the paramilitary rapid support forces that have been going on for almost 2 years. The Southern Bureau Emergency Room confirmed that the bombing left significant human losses and great material damages. It was known that the wounded were taken to health centers to receive adequate medical attention, as 29 of them were burned. It is important to note that both the military and the paramilitary forces are facing accusations of war crimes in the context of this conflict. And Haiti's National Human Rights Network denounced the execution of more than 110 elderly people. According to the activist platform, the leader of one of the groups that make up the Living Together Coalition, Manuel Felix, also known as Micano, ordered the massacre. The criminals confined and isolated the area before carrying out the massacre with machetes and knives, executing more than 60 people on Friday and another 55 on Saturday in Cité Soleil, one of the largest, most impoverished, and most crime-ridden neighborhoods in the country. According to the network, the death of one of Micano's sons was the trigger for the massacre, which was attributed by a voodoo priest to alleged witchcraft practiced by those executed. In other news, in Cuba, the Civil Society Forum Against Racism was held in Havana. The event was held at the headquarters of the National Union of Jurists with the purpose of making visible the commitment and work of the largest of the Antilles in the fight against racism and racial discrimination. The debate was attended by representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the United Nations system, and national and foreign experts and community leaders. The president of the Cuban United Nations Association, Norma Goicoechea, pointed out the importance of the meeting at a time when the world, despite international conventions, continues to show racism and xenophobia.
We talk about racism, racial discrimination, all kinds of violence, intolerance, and xenophobia. We must take into account the very important role that not only promotes the adoption of policies or denunciations, but also integrate actions to carry out this combat to achieve not only a greater perception, but also a greater operability in taking actions to eliminate these problems, which are very serious. In Cuba, we still have some problems to which the Cuban Color Program provides answers.
We now have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Venezuela, the Ayacucho 1824-2024 International Colloquium concluded, recalling the relevance of the battle as a political symbol and the validity of the call for unity among the peoples of the Americas. The President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, greeted the closure of the forum, highlighting and praising the successful results of this meeting that brought together several historians of Latin America. He also highlighted the importance of this great historical battle for the construction and development of the Latin American peoples. Maduro made a call to join communicational efforts to publish the papers and speeches of the Ayacucho International Colloquium, and referring to the future of these events, he urged to be inspired by the conquest of the liberating armies and not by the foreign ones. Also in Caracas, Venezuela, Latin American historians and researchers called for Latin American unity during the closing of the International Colloquium Ayacucho 1824-2024, an event that debated the historical transcendence of this battle and its relevance in the regional scenario. Luis Francisco Blandón with the report.
In the second
cycle of conference, historians and opinion experts reflected on the significance of the Battle of Ayacucho up to the present day and how it can inspire new forms of integration and cooperation in the continent. In In 1824 and 1825, after the battle and the victory of the Bolivarian army, what began to be discussed was the project of Latin American unity. And the press says it. It is part of the work that I came to present here. It is an exercise of the tracing of the way in which the press in Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Peru, Colombia received the victory, how it was published, in what way it was made known that, indeed, in the south of America, the liberation of the territories from the Spanish dominion had taken place. So it is very interesting.
De los territorios del dominio español. Así que muy interesante.
Afirman que nuevas investigaciones y herramientas
They affirm that new research and tools currently allow a constant and renewed revision of what happened in Ayacucho, and that sustains the patriotic discourse of a united and sovereign America after the victory of 1824.
Han habido dos fenómenos interesantes. Uno es
There have been two interesting phenomena. One is the digitalization of archives that has allowed new young historians and also recognized historians to show us other visions of that Ayacucho, what happened in Ayacucho, why after Junin the victory of Ayacucho was so important. And secondly, there is a historiographic renovation by not abandoning the patriotic discourse that was always present in the academies of history of the 20th century.
las academias de historia del siglo XX.
una profunda concertación frente a los desafíos.
A deep agreement in the face of the current challenges in the region, inequality, poverty, and political fragmentation. Hence the importance of an insurgent history that offers other aspects of the independence struggle.
A lo largo de estos 300 años hubo diferentes.
Throughout these 300 years, there have been different forms of participation and resistance of the peoples. It has not always been the same. That is why there is a common thread. We talked about that from 1824 to the present. There is a common thread. There is the peoples in resistance, the leaders that appeared. Our America has a great wealth of men and women who have given their lives for the liberation of all people.
Su vida por la liberación de nuestros pueblos.
Desde Venezuela, el gobierno nacional.
From Venezuela, the national government promotes the celebration of the bicentennial of Ayacucho to make a greater communication effort and bring these reflections to the academies and educational institutions.
Y además hacer un esfuerzo ahora con las
And furthermore, to make an effort now with the new communication technologies of this era to produce pieces like this, as teleSUR is doing. teleSUR is doing a tremendous job. I congratulate teleSUR for the work they are doing in the diffusion of all these materials and this colloquium. You do not know the spiritual food and the inspiration that you have brought us with this colloquium in these days. And I hope that you participate in all the events of commemoration of Ayacucho for the highest thing that we are going to do with our people.
de conmemoración de Ayacucho por lo más alto que vamos a hacer con nuestro pueblo.
El coloquio finalizó con las canciones
The colloquium ended with the patriotic songs that accompanied the emancipation deeds of Bolívar and Sucre, an unprecedented decoding and restoration of the original manuscripts of those great musicians who expressed with revolutionary fervor the process that gave independence to a large part of the continent, which resonates today in the collective memory and honors the Bolivarian legacy 200 years later.
después. Luis Francisco Blandón, Caracas, Venezuela.
The President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, celebrated the inauguration of the largest solar plant in Colombian territory, assuring that it represents a breakthrough in the country's energy transition. The head of state highlighted the entry into commercial operation of the W.H.O 1 and 2 park, which with 820,600 solar panels spread over 1,110 hectares with a capacity of 370 megawatts. The management of the enclave, located in the department of Atlántico, is carried out by the multinational company Enel. With the entry into operation of these plants, Enel completes 4 solar parks in the country with an installed capacity of 700 megawatts, which represents more than 30% of Colombia's solar energy. And in Curitiba, capital of the Brazilian state of Paraná, the 21st edition of the Agroecology Day of the Landless Movement came to an end. The event determined the directions of the confrontation of the humanitarian crisis of capitalism and its effects on nature. From Sao Paulo, correspondent Ignacio Lemos with the details.
During 5 days, exhibitors, farmers, intellectuals, artists in diverse sectors of society exchanged experiences and ideas in the search for advances in the agrarian development model, based on respect for nature and peasants. In the face of the capitalist crisis, agroecology is presented as a phenomenon whose horizon is directed towards the past.
I see on TV that rich countries are discussing a lot that they will spend $1 trillion in 10 years for improvements against global warming. It will be money burned. To face global warming, we have to demarcate indigenous lands. Because the more we demarcate indigenous lands in Brazil and America, the more forests there will be, because the world needs forests. Without forests, we do not live.
A letter was presented at the 21st Agroecology Day that evaluated the social and humanitarian crisis that the planet is experiencing, the effects of wars, financialization, destruction of nature, assassinations of human rights defenders, and genocide against peoples. Agribusiness was denounced as one of the main culprits in the global climate crisis due to the destruction of the environment and the high emission of greenhouse gases.
If you have a crisis, it means that the needs of the population will increase, and agribusiness only thinks of profit. It does not produce food, it produces agricultural commodities for export. So they made their choice. It is an illusion to believe that agribusiness as a model of production organization will solve the problems of agriculture, because they attack the environment, they help to unbalance nature, and above all, they do not solve the economic problems. Because agribusiness in Brazil only produces soybeans, corn, cotton, sugarcane, and beef. But that is not what the people need. The people need jobs, food, income, and agribusiness concentrates the income.
Agroecology is advancing in constant resistance, an example of which is the siege suffered by peasants, forced to flee to the cities in the Amazonian state of Para after the arrival of the agribusiness giant cargo.
Analyses have already been carried out on water, where glyphosate was detected, as well as in human urine in several people from whom the material was collected. In our region, water from rivers and wells was contaminated with this agrotoxin.
In view of the commitments assumed by Brazil at the command of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, agroecology delimits the models as an antagonistic proposal to the neoliberal circuits of food commercialization concentrated in a few companies. Thus, it demands the strengthening of a decentralized agriculture that respects territorial conditions, privileging the internal consumption of communities and sectors impacted by poverty.
Ignacio Lemus y Leonardo Enrique dos Santos para teleSUR.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.